Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this week's episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Alright, Kim, so this episode, Bad Eggs, was written by Marty Noxon and directed by David Greenwalt, and the blurb is, Willow, Cordelia, Giles, and Joyce become drones for an ancient beast after its eggs are mistakenly given out as part of a health class assignment. So clearly we're back to the blurbs that tell you the entire plot of the episode.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything.
So this episode wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was.
Me too. I was going to say that. I remember this episode as being way worse than it was.
Yeah. And I think it's just like there's nothing like egregiously bad about it. It's just kind of a meh episode for me. Mm-hmm. And so it's not one that I return to. But I really remembered this episode being terrible. But there's a lot of funny dialogue bits that I really enjoyed. It's just the main plot isn't great. And it's another, especially coming off of Ted, it's another episode where you just really don't care for Joyce that much. Which Buffy is not behaving right under normal circumstances, but us as the audience, knowing everything that Buffy's dealing with, you're just like, oh man, this is fun. We're gonna do this story again. I did have a note here that this must have been a weird episode for David when he got the script and realized he had 15 lines of dialogue and the only other thing he had to do in the episode was make out with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
Literally, he just showed up to make out and then he was dismissed, and that was his paycheck for the week.
Yeah, and most of his lines are just okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
One word lines. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so we start out at the mall. Is this our first time at the mall?
This is our first time at the mall. Because I have in my notes, hey, Sunnydale, this tiny little town, has a mall. We're at a mall to the list of things that we have. Now, I think they might have mentioned the mall before, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time.
Yeah. So the very opening shot, you can immediately see Lyle Gorch there, which I appreciated. But then we cut to Buffy and Joyce, and they're walking through the mall. And Buffy is apparently wanting an outfit that Joyce thinks is inappropriate and thinks it would make Buffy look like a streetwalker. And I'm just like, what is this outfit? Because Joyce is pretty lenient when it comes to what Buffy's allowed to wear.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, I really want to see what this outfit is, because Buffy dresses pretty skimpy sometimes.
Yeah.
Which she's more than welcome to do, but what is this outfit that's she's not allowed to wear?
Yeah, what is the outfit that Joyce is not willing to get for Buffy? That's the outfit that I need to know more about.
Yeah. So, okay, and then they have several errands to do, so Joyce and Buffy split up the stuff and are going to meet later, and Buffy has to go pick up a dress for her mom, and she goes to do that. As she's going down the escalator, she sees a vampire with a young girl, and she follows them, and they end up in a closed arcade. And it's closed, but somehow the girl and the vampire are playing one of the games.
Mm-hmm. I just appreciate this girl that she's more interested in getting a new high score than she is in making out with this guy.
Yeah, I like that too.
Priorities.
And then Buffy interrupts them, and the girl's like, "Do you mind? We were talking." And Buffy tells him, or says, "But you promised never to cheat on me again." Mm-hmm. And the girl's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go." And I love that.
Yes.
I love that line. I think it's so funny. And then we discover this vampire is very, very southern. Very southern. He likes to call people sugar lips and say giddy up.
Yes.
Very, very southern.
So what always happens when we get to the Gorch brothers is I am reminded that James Marsters initially auditioned for Spike with a Texan accent. And I'm just like, man, that would have been a different version of Spike.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have.
Oh, man. But yes, very southern indeed. And they kind of get into a fight. And the vamp says you must be the Slayer and introduces himself as Lyle Gorch. And then just kind of runs off, and Buffy does that thing that she does sometimes where she just lets him.
Yeah, she just lets him.
And then she goes to meet with Joyce, and Joyce is like, where's my dress? And Buffy's like,
Which,
oh,
why
crap.
didn't she go get the dress after the fight? Like, I mean, I get that she got distracted, but then she completely forgot what she was doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why did you go get the dress?
But anyway, Joyce is like, oh, you were distracted by a boy, and Buffy's like, well, yeah, you're not wrong. And then Joyce has this line about responsibility and that you need to think about anything other than boys and clothes, which she specifically says clothes, which I noted because of you, that Joyce is the one that uses clothes.
What do you mean?
Because you're always on about them saying clothing instead of clothes.
It's weird.
But Joyce is normal.
Yeah, but people don't really just say clothing like that. And it's weird because it's also in the script. Yeah. How often do you hear people say clothing? So you're like, okay, I'm going to go get my clothes, or I had to pack my clothes. Not, oh, I'm going to pack my clothing.
See, never before would I have noticed that. I will
odd.
Forever notice that now because of you.
Yeah.
This is the journey that we're on together.
Yes, I find it weird.
So when Joyce asks about that, Buffy replies, saving the world from vampires, which we'll discuss again, I guess, in season 6 when we get to normal again, because that's a horrible inconsistency, but that's for a much, much later podcast. And we go to credits.
And then when we come back to the show, we are in a small, little janitor's closet, and Xander and Cordelia are making out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of talking to each other, and Cordelia says something about being late for class, and Xander's like, yeah, let's not talk. And then Cordelia's like, well, let's not look at each other either.
Yeah.
Xander gets offended, and they start talking about what they don't like about each other, really. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you know what? Both of them are like, I don't need this anymore. We're going to stop. They go to open the door, and their hands touch each other, and then they're making out again.
Clearly the pinnacle of a healthy relationship right there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They are ready to counsel other people on healthy relationships.
So then we cut to the sex education class. This is the big point of the episode, the giant foreshadow before surprise. Xander is very honest in this class, is very willing to talk about how much he thinks about sex. There's also cuts of Willow where she's super nervous, just has those shifty eyes, I do not want to be part of this conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to explain why she's doing that.
Okay.
Because I do not think it's just because of the conversation.
Okay.
Willow is doing that because several times in the script, it has where this guy named Dave, an enormous dumb jock type guy, is supposed to be making her uncomfortable during the conversation.
Oh.
He's staring at her and winking at her and she squirms uncomfortably while he stares and stuff. And that's supposed to be happening. And what I'm guessing is they took all those little bits out, but Willow is still in that scene. So she's acting all uncomfortable and weird.
Yeah, that's super weird.
But yeah, that's supposed to be happening during this whole scene. And then at the end, when Xander gets the person for his partner, which I'm going to talk about because I find that weird, Dave, the enormous jock that's been making her uncomfortable, runs up to her and grabs Willow as his partner. Now, that's the only mentions of him in the entire script for this episode, but that is why she's acting like that, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. I thought it was just trying to show the different...
That she was weird about sex.
Yeah, she wasn't as ready for this discussion as other people are.
And I guess it could be that, but also with the notes in the script of what's supposed to be happening, because Dave never talks, it's just notes about him.
Yeah.
I think that maybe it was supposed to be him making her uncomfortable.
Well, and it also seemed weird to me because she's pretty comfortable talking about it with Buffy in the next episode when they're talking about Buffy and Angel potentially having sex for the first time. She's not really weirded out by there, and she like just kind of understands what's happened and everything like that after the fact. So like she's certainly aware and comfortable enough with the idea of sex in those episodes, so it seemed kind of weird in this episode, but I just figured it was an inconsistency. But no, apparently there's just a guy that was making a lot of inappropriate gestures to her that we didn't get to see. But what's actually in this is Xander and Cordelia complaining about each other very publicly and super obviously, and I'm not sure how anybody hadn't started piecing together that these two are...
Right. Like, how did Willow not figure it out here? She's pretty smart, and we've talked before about she's aware of everything Xander does.
Yeah.
Like, how does she not start suspecting here that something might be happening between Xander and Cordelia?
I mean, a girl may seem spiffy, but if she ignores her flossing, the bloom is definitely off the rose.
Like that compares to kissing a guy who thinks the Hoover technique is a big turn-on.
What about having to feign interest in her vapid little chit-chat just so you can get some touch?
It's weird to me. I think Willow should have figured it out at this point.
Yeah.
Because she's smart.
It's so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
obvious.
very egregious in this. Like, they're just
Yeah.
finding ways to complain about each other.
Yeah. And at this point, Mr. Whitmore gives, in the script, he does not do this in the episode, but in the script, he gives this very long 2-paragraph rant about how awful children are.
Oh.
And that they are relentless, needy tyrants. And he gives them eggs to treat as babies and take care of, the whole learning to be responsible and a parent thing that you generally see in any TV show or movie with a high school or high school students, but that I don't really know if ever actually happened.
From my
in real
understanding,
life.
I didn't ever go to a public high school, but from my understanding, everybody that has ever talked about any of these episodes that exist in television, they're just like, we didn't have anything like this.
Yeah, we didn't either. My school didn't either. And I went to 2 different high schools, so. I never understood the project anyway. It's an egg. It does not equal a baby. It's not the same size, the same shape. It doesn't have the same sturdiness. Babies aren't exactly unbreakable, but they're pretty sturdy compared to an egg.
Yeah.
It's not like
it also doesn't do any of the things that make parenting hard. You can just put the egg in a safe place and not have to worry about it.
You just have an egg for a couple of days. It doesn't make sense. As a project, it makes no sense. But, okay, so we see it on TV all the time that health classes for teenagers do this project. And at this point, they're pairing up because they're going to do it together as parents. And Xander looks at Cordelia and she turns and grabs this guy. And then Xander walks up to a girl who, by the way, in the script book is described as a cute little muffin.
Oh.
Which I don't really like. But, and starts flirting with her and asking her to, partner up with him. And what is that? That makes no sense. Because first of all, he says, I know we just met. Isn't this supposed to be a small school where you know everybody? This is a tiny little class. There's 12 students in it.
Yeah.
How do they not know each other? And also, it's Xander. Why wouldn't he? I get where he was like, oh, Cordelia, I'll pair with her. But when she picked somebody else, why wouldn't he immediately ask Willow?
Yeah.
His best friend who does schoolwork with him all the time.
Who would nail this assignment and he would not have to do anything.
Right. Why wouldn't he just go directly to Willow? Willow, who it says sees Dave barreling toward her. She looks around desperately for another partner or for Xander, but everyone is already attached.
It's also weird.
So, yeah.
I don't understand the pairing up in general, because does each couple only get one egg and thus only
Or do they have twins?
Half of them are responsible? I don't get it. I don't understand the pairing off.
I think they're supposed to take turns, but somebody would have it one night and somebody would have it the next night, and it doesn't even make sense for the premise of the show, because everyone needs an egg to get zombified, right?
Yeah. It's not a good way to distribute all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from there, we go to the library, and Willow and Xander bring in their eggs. Willow has hers in a little makeshift cradle that she's already assembled and has prepared, and Xander is tossing his around. And this is the first section where I'm just there's some fun dialogue in this episode. And I really enjoy some of the back and forth here.
Yeah, this has some really good one-liners.
I appreciate it when Buffy asks if it was noticed that she was tardy, and they explain, actually, you were absent, and that was noticed, and here's what I was given to give to you, and she's handed an egg, and she's like, as far as punishment goes, this is fairly abstract. I'm just like, yes, this is the Buffy dialogue I come here for.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good throughout the episode.
Yeah.
Which I think saves it because, like, the storyline on its own isn't that great.
Yeah, the storyline isn't that great. The Gorch brothers aren't that interesting. Again, a pretty skippable episode as far as advancement for any of the characters. But this one at least has fun attached to it, whereas Ted was just kind of awful throughout. It's just not a fun experience watching it. Whereas this one, you have fun dialogue. You have, fun character interaction.
There's a lot of, grinning moments. Like, somebody will say something and be like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Willow explains that it's Buffy's baby, and Xander's just like, yeah, it's, you gotta take care of the egg and teach it Christian values.
My egg is Jewish.
Then teach it that dreidel song.
Buffy has this line right after that I just love because it very much dates the show. Where she says, I can't take care of stuff. I killed my Gigapet. And I'm like, oh, I remember Gigapet. I had 8 of them on a keychain.
But then she says something else, which is confusing to me, because I think they kind of had this idea that they were playing with, but they never really fully formed the theme of this episode, where Buffy says that she's basically doomed to lead her mother's life because she's has to be a single mother in this class. She was the odd student out. And yeah, they do a lot with the mother-daughter relationship in this, and kind of introduce this idea of this dynamic. But then they don't really do anything with it.
Yeah, it's almost like they ran out of time, or they were setting it up for another episode, and the other episode just never happened.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, the message of the episode is that Buffy gets grounded and doesn't really learn any lesson.
At all. But, technically, the stuff she's getting grounded for is not really her fault or anything she did wrong.
Yeah.
So, if she wasn't, she's the Slayer. She can't help the stuff that happened.
Absolutely.
There wasn't, as far as I don't really see that there's a lesson to be learned.
Yeah, but it feels like it's like it tried to set something up and then didn't actually do anything with it. Because there's enough little dialogue bits and enough specifically focused on the mother-daughter relationship. And there's a moment later when Joyce talks about Buffy being a burden and stuff there's just stuff like that feels like it's setting up to have this really tender moment. But at the end of the episode, Joyce is still mad at Buffy, and Buffy's just grounded because Joyce doesn't know that she's the Slayer. That's just the situation at hand here.
Well, and there's not one in the script that they cut out.
Yeah.
So. And part of that might be Mr. Whitmore's rant about children and how awful they are.
Yeah.
That got cut out. No? That might have
Maybe
been
the point of this
too.
episode is just children are the worst.
Don't have children. It's too late for me. Save yourself, Megan.
Oh, okay. Giles comes out from the little book cage area and shouts success, and he's found Lyle Gorch, who has a brother named Tector, and they made a name for themselves by massacring a Mexican village in 1886, to which Buffy's like, oh, those are nice little demons, and Giles corrects her and says, no, that's before they were vampires.
Yeah. And then he mentions that they're not the great thinkers of our time, which you see this in pretty much everything, that Southern people are always dumb. Mm-hmm. So,
yep,
we're used to it.
Yeah, we're hit with two stereotypes here. We're racist and dumb. I'm glad I'm breaking those.
What are you talking about in the show?
Yeah,
there's racist in the show.
Well, he killed an entire Mexican village.
Oh, okay. I didn't pick up on that. I was like, where are they racist in the show? How did I miss it? Oh no. Yeah, they're supposed to be from Texas though, so maybe proximity. I don't know. They don't say or do anything racist, so I didn't pick up on it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, could be.
So Xander suggests that Buffy slays them. Giles is still of the mindset that you might want help because they could still be a threat, and then is suddenly confused why there's eggs all around him.
Yeah, which they don't explain.
Nah.
And I'll just mention that Giles is really weird in this episode. He's like kind of like an afterthought through the entire thing.
Yeah. There's particularly something later on that I find weird that we'll talk about when we get to it.
Yeah, I've got notes about that too.
So Willow suggests hunting the Gorches with Angel, and Xander understands how that's going to work out. And Buffy's like, no, what do you think we're just like helpless slaves to passion? Grow up. And then we cut to Angel's only role in this episode, which is making out with Buffy.
Pretty much.
They are hot and heavy for each other, and they just can't keep their hands off each other. And, you know, there's the nice nod, very subtle nod earlier in the episode that Buffy is the one student to miss the sex education class. So we all know where this is headed.
Yeah. Although there wasn't a whole lot of education in that class. Just like a rant about how awful kids are, and then here's the egg to take care of.
Yeah.
Basically, this whole scene is Buffy and Angel making out. They break apart a couple of times to talk about how they should really be hunting. Mm-hmm. They should really be looking for vampires.
Yeah.
And then they start kissing again.
Yeah.
And that happens a couple of times. So, yeah, that's that scene.
Yeah. The Gorch brothers are watching them. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy Tector's line of, how come she ain't slaying, and how come he's about to make me blush?
And apparently they don't know that Angelus is Angel now, because they talk about how it's Angelus.
Which is funny, because eventually they get very specific about the pronunciation and have it be Angelus. And I think it's when he moves to Los Angeles, just to kind of have that separation where they're really strict about that pronunciation. But a lot of these early seasons, you get more of that faster Angelus pronunciation instead of the very hard second syllable.
I was going to point out that in this scene we see affection between vampires again. Mm-hmm. Like they're brothers, but still, it's affection between them. And as we learned throughout Buffy and Angel, that family don't necessarily still care about each other.
Yeah,
but these two seem to.
Yes, we continue to play with this soul canon, as we like to call it, of what makes Angel special tends to not make him as special as the show wants us to make him, because we do see signs of vampires showing affection. Now, I will say, at the end when Tector dies, there's not really a huge reaction from Lyle, so they're still like pretty easy to move on, but they do enjoy the company while it's around, it seems.
Yeah. Well, he's not devastated or anything, but they do care about each other.
Yes. So yeah, basically Lyle says that he could whip them both if he wanted to, but he's waiting because he's got a plan. We never really know what his plan was, because he just shows up at the school later. So,
which apparently is his plan.
It's a good plan.
And that's all it is. Then we cut to Buffy's bedroom, where she is putting her egg down for the night. And she's got this little checklist where she says, feeding check, burping check, diapers check. And it's like, it's an egg. It's just sitting in a basket. Like, how did you feed it? How did you burp it? Especially without breaking it. Like, did you put a diaper on your egg? Like, it makes no sense.
But she named it, she gave it a cute name.
Egbert.
In the middle of the night, Egbert hatches.
Sort of.
And is this gross tentacle thing that reaches to Buffy and, like, attaches to her face and, like, kind of wiggles in her ear, and it's just...
Ew.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's ew.
It's very ew. And then we got another short scene of the Gorches in the sewers. Tector's complaining about the accommodations because they're in the sewers. Not
fun.
Yeah. Lyle explains that he raised Tector, and that, again, you see that familiar bond and stuff like that. And yeah, they do definitely break the norm of what we think of for vampires. But Tector's kind of egging... see what I did there? Egging Lyle on about how he's afraid, and then they decide to swap some punches because they're manly men who want to punch each other. That's the only takeaway I've got. There's really not a lot to discuss about Lyle and Tector.
No.
They exist.
They're there. They're brothers. We go to Buffy waking up in the morning, and she's really tired and weak. And she goes into the kitchen to talk to her mom. And there's some funny lines in this one, too, where Joyce asks her if she's sure her egg is secure in that basket. And she says, "Did I ask for a backseat, Mommy?" Which is pretty funny. So they talk about how tired she is. And then we're in the library. And Giles is like, "What are you three doing?"
Just the weirdest creepy shot where it pans over and they're all just staring. Like, I would be wigged out by that.
Yeah, it is kind of. And they say that their health class got canceled, and he asked for help. And Buffy and Willow say no because Willow's in the same kind of funk Buffy is, where she's real tired and stuff. And Xander's fine. Xander's like, "Okay, I will," and starts tossing his egg around and giving a little lecture about overprotective parenting. At which point he drops his egg and it doesn't break. And we find out he hard-boiled his egg.
Yep.
Which, like, wouldn't the teacher check the eggs at the end of the project? Like, I guess you could just replace it with another egg.
Yeah,
or
the
something.
other thing is, like, the eggs aren't marked in any way, so, you know.
Yeah.
More just great dialogue in this.
Yes, it is.
In this scene. Like, the dialogue definitely makes this episode much more bearable. The just lovely back and forth between these characters. Giles explaining that is cheating, and Xander's like, "No, it's like a shortcut in a race," and Buffy's like, "That's also cheating." Just little things like that. But then, of course, the classic Giles saying that there's a certain Machiavellian ingenuity to Xander's solution and Xander's reply, which is just the funniest.
I resent that. Or possibly thank you.
So then Cordelia comes in and is like, "Oh, something major's going on. And Mr. Whitmore didn't show today. He's missing, presumed dead." They're like, "By who?" And she says, "Me." And they're like, "Well, you know, you might be overreacting a little bit." And she was like, "We should look around. Don't you think we should look around, Xander?" Basically trying to, you know, she wants to make out with Xander.
Yeah.
And he doesn't catch on, so she has to get even more specific, talking about how they should especially check all the closets and see if he's in a closet. Xander gets it and is like, "Oh, yeah," and like leaves with her. And then Willow and Buffy are just talking about how weird they were. Which I'm like, Willow, come on now. Seriously, y'all are smarter than this.
And Buffy says, "Okay, well, I'll patrol tonight." And basically then we cut to more Angel and Buffy macking.
Pretty much.
Yeah. There's more here, though. There's actually, like, a conversation, and an important one for these two characters to have.
Yeah, they actually do attempt to hunt, and then they have a kind of a conversation about the eggs, and then about whether or not Angel could ever have kids. Or Buffy wants kids, and they start talking about the future.
Yeah.
There's some really good lines, especially at the end.
So the interesting bit about this exchange, there's a number of interesting things. Buffy first is like, not planning on having kids anytime soon, maybe someday in the future. Then later on, Angel like asks her point blank that if she thinks about the future, and she says no, but she just had this whole thing where she said, "Maybe someday in the future I'll have kids," right? Like, she just said that, like, just a few seconds prior. And then, like, retcons that a little bit after Angel says that he can't have kids.
I can kind of see that, because, you know, a 16-year-old girl, most assume that one day they will get married and have kids. There's just kind of what they're taught to expect, and most of them are like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get married and have kids.
Yeah. It's interesting because Angel really, like, seems like he has a level head and is actually pushing for this. And then Buffy fires back with, "When I look into the future, all I see is you. All I want is you." And then they basically just go back to kissing. And I feel like we've talked a little bit about Angel's kind of immaturity in these early seasons of Buffy, and how he really should be more of an adult in this relationship and understand the things that Buffy's sacrificing here.
Yeah.
And it's just, it seems like it's going that way, and then Buffy's like, no, listen, I'm okay as long as I have you in my future. I don't need any of that other stuff. And I'm just like, ooh, there should have been more to this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
It's also funny because Angel is the only one in the series that, like, has a kid of any of the main characters, so.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that yet.
But
No.
it's fun. But anyway, at the end of this scene, when they're like, oh yeah, our future, as long as we have each other, yeah, that's all we want, basically. And then it pans over to a gravestone that says, in loving memory.
I saw that. I was like, "Ooh, wow, foreshadowing."
I verbally said subtle.
Yeah. Poor Angel and Buffy.
Oh.
Okay, so the next scene I have some issues with. Like, just the whole scene. Because it starts out with a night security guard walking down the hall of Sunnydale High School.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, this is the first and last time there is ever a security guard at Sunnydale High School.
Mm-hmm. It was something they were trying.
Was he hired for just this
It
one
didn't
night?
work out.
Like, how come we've never seen a security guard at this school before when there are constantly people in and out 24 hours a day? And who would take that job?
Oh, man. It's
Like, who would take that job?
nah.
Because they have to be murdered on a pretty regular basis.
Yes.
So he goes in the boiler room. He can't get the lights to work. He hears a noise and heads toward it and finds a hole dug in the wall, just kind of ripped into the wall. And instead of running away like a sane person would do, he moves closer to it and sticks his head in.
Mm-hmm.
At which point the missing health teacher shoves him into the hole, and then Mr. Whitmore picks up an axe and steps into the hole behind him. Which, if he had just ran away or not taken a job as a security guard at Sunnydale High School, that wouldn't have happened to him.
Imagine if you, like, just moved to town and was just like, oh, this seems like a safe job. What could happen at the high school at night? Nothing. It's fine. Yeah.
So then the next scene is Buffy crawling back in her bedroom window. And as she comes in, she sees the egg start cracking open. And I mean, I guess instead of just a little trindle coming out this time, the whole thing cracks open and this little squid/crab creature comes out.
I have like 5 different names that I call it throughout the course of the episode. Most of the time I went with demon spawn.
Yeah, so it's slithering around her room, and she's like horrified and starts chasing it, and they kind of have a quite a bit of time where she's looking for this thing in her room.
This is a really long scene.
It's kind of a creepy scene.
Yeah.
She looks under the bed and under the dresser and behind stuff, and then she hears it crawling up the wall and turns and stabs it with a letter opener. Or is it scissors?
It's scissors. And the funny part is she starts with an iron. Like, you show her pick up an iron, and then she holds this iron for like a good 30 seconds and then switches to the scissors. It's a very long scene.
Yeah, the scissors is a better choice.
Yeah, I would say. She traded up. She immediately calls Willow and starts, panicking and asking her about her egg.
Your egg. How's your egg?
And Willow explains that it's totally normal, that it's in the fridge. And Buffy kind of explains what happened with her egg. And Willow suggests that it's a trap from the Gorch brothers. And they end their conversation, and it pans over to the egg by Willow's bed being cracked open. And then it just shows Willow's, like, deadpan eyes. So, there's that.
Oh, no. It got Willow. And then we're back at Buffy's room, and she's hanging up the phone, and Joyce enters the room to ask who Buffy's talking to.
Yep.
And Buffy is still fully dressed. And Joyce automatically assumes she's about to go somewhere. Which I guess is better than Joyce realizing she just got home from somewhere.
Yeah.
So Buffy pretty much tells her the truth. Yeah, I got off the phone with Willow. And Joyce is like, yeah, I don't believe you. And tells her she's grounded. And then we move to Joyce's car, dropping her off on the way to school, and says, you're not allowed to do anything until I say so. After school, you go to the library and you stay there till I pick you up at 5:30. And Buffy climbs out of the car.
So a weird note that I have for this scene is there's never a car line at Sunnydale High.
Yeah, never.
Just something.
It's always just Joyce right in front of the school.
Okay, so as Buffy's kind of approaching the school, we see Cordelia with her teddy bear backpack.
I remember those.
And she started that nationwide craze. It was all Cordelia's fault.
Oh, yeah.
Buffy, with zero chill, asks about Cordelia's egg. Cordelia's just like, it's in my bear. And Buffy's like, how's it acting? And she's like, it's an egg. It doesn't emote.
Yeah, I like that. It doesn't emote. Although I feel like I realized that Willow was already like under the egg's spell or clamping or whatever you want to call it. But at this point, I don't know that Cordelia is.
No, she's not, because you see it like breaking out of her bear later on. That's why we have this.
So she like,
that's just
she
Cordelia.
knows that Buffy's the Slayer. Like, why would she assume, or why wouldn't she like trust that, hey, maybe something's weird about the eggs because the Slayer's telling me, or the Slayer's acting weird about the eggs.
Because she's distracted by her friend's hair. It's fine.
I don't know. The first thing, if that, I would be like, oh, the Slayer is asking me about the egg? What's wrong with the egg? What kind of egg is it?
What is it?
Yeah. And then we see Xander, and he is opening up a breakfast bar and doesn't want it, and then takes his egg and starts to...
I have so many problems with Xander in this scene.
Well, starts to roll it and crack it on the bench. Now, at this point, this egg's at least 24 hours old.
Yeah, like, even if this wasn't a demon spawn, this is not a good idea. Do not keep a hard-boiled egg in your bag, unrefrigerated, in California, and then just casually decide to eat it.
Unless he's just bringing a different hard-boiled egg to school every day, but still.
Also, littering Xander, not cool.
Yeah, he just throws that paper in that granola bar down on the ground, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I saw that too. I'm like, is there not a garbage can? Okay, the Buffy, Willow, and Cordy are all together, and well, Buffy says, I'm sorry for calling you so late. And Buffy says, you know, I think you're probably right that it's the Gorch brothers laying a trap for me. And Willow says that Giles will meet them in the lab, and they will dissect or study or analyze or whatever the creature that Buffy has brought in.
Yeah, and while they're walking, the camera kind of goes behind and pans down to Willow's lower back, and just underneath the edge of her shirt, you can see one of the hatchlings like attached to her spine. So,
which is kind of weird because I don't know that Willow's ever worn a crop top in her life, but now has one on, so we can see this. Yeah.
Well, you gotta let that demon spawn breathe a little bit. So
I know it's probably not an actual crop top. It's probably just a really short shirt.
The demon spawn chose the outfit. So the girls are walking up to Xander, and he is about to take a bite of his egg, which turns out to not be yummy, delicious 24-hour-old boiled egg at all. And he screams and throws it. And then we cut to the lab, and this is my favorite. But Buffy and Xander are looking over at this like weird squiddy, crawly creature thing that's laid out, and just have this amazing exchange, which delights me to no end.
Yeah. Before they have that exchange, Buffy asks where Giles is, and this might be important. I think this is important. Says, where's Giles? And Willow says, he said we should get started and he'll be by as soon as possible. So I'm just pointing that out. Yeah, then the exchange is very funny.
I actually think it's the reverse of that. I think that starts, and then Willow comes in and says that Giles told him to get started. Is it different in the script book? I'm always curious about things like that.
Well, there's an exchange before and after, and we might be thinking that two different things
my
are
exchange
funny.
is definitely them just making, like, weird sounds.
Okay.
And upping each other's weird, gross sounds.
And the exchange that I'm saying is funny is the one where Buffy is like, dissect it, why me? And Xander says, you're the Slayer. So, we were talking about two different exchanges as being the funny one.
Can I just say, yeah?
I see your yeah and raise you a yeah.
So, okay. Get started, Buffy. Dissect it or something.
Me? Why do I have to dissect it?
Because you're the Slayer?
And I slayed. My work here is done.
Oh, no. I almost ate one of these things. I think I fulfilled my gross out quota for the decade.
They're both pretty good.
Yeah.
And Willow just says, guys, and starts cutting on it because, she's Willow. So then we close up on Cordelia's backpack where her bear is moving and trindles start coming out of it and moving around
punching
out of
out
its eyes.
Oh, poor teddy bear backpack.
Yeah. And then they're discussing what could have happened to Mr. Whitmore, and Willow just like, maybe the offspring used him to return to the Mother Bezor. And everybody's like, what? At which point Willow and Cordelia pretty much knock Xander and Buffy unconscious.
Yeah.
That's what happens there.
I don't know, like, there's just times where Buffy's really easy to knock out.
Yeah. Then she has, well, I guess when she's not expecting it.
Maybe. I still go with the fact that Cordelia's just incredibly strong.
So then they put Buffy and Xander in the closet and shut and lock the door. And they kind of jump into this line of kids going down to the basement to where we saw the security guard and Mr. Whitmore at.
Yeah.
And they stop in this room before they go. Like, everyone goes in this room and grabs a tool and then heads down. And these tools are all like pickaxes and hoes and shovels and like long stabby tools like that. And there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of these tools for a school. Like, I could see like the boiler room having like a shovel.
I mean, I could even see
but
if
like,
you have some kind of like tool shed on the school, having a few shovels and a rake and things like that. But several pickaxes? Why do they need
there's
pickaxes?
several of all these things. There's like dozens of these tools. And like, what are these for? Why are all these in a high school storage room? It's really creepy. So then they all like march down to the hole where everybody's going. And then we go to the library and we see Mom enter the library. And she's calling for Buffy. She's like, Buffy, Buffy. And Giles steps out and is like, hey. So they have a little conversation about Buffy and parenting. And Giles seems kind of awkward during this, which I guess makes sense because we realize at the end that he has been zombified by one of the little squid demon creatures too.
Does it though? Does it make sense?
It doesn't make sense that that has happened to him, but like the way he's acting makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
You don't think so?
I really don't. For several reasons. One, why is he just like hiding in the library anyway?
That's what I have that in my notes. Like, why are you? Because this has literally been all day. Like, when this happened with Cordelia and Willow knocking Buffy and Xander out and going down there, it was pretty early in the morning. Because Buffy had just got dropped off and they had went straight to the lab.
Yeah.
So not only have Xander and Buffy been unconscious in a closet all day, literally all day, because it's like 5:30 now, Giles has been presumably zombified by this thing all day, just hanging out in the library. Is he waiting for something? Like, he couldn't have known Joyce was coming.
Yeah. Like,
He didn't know that. So what's he doing just hanging out in the library? Why hasn't he gone down to the hole in the wall with everyone else? And how did they knock Buffy and Xander out so well that they have been unconscious literally all day? Like, this has been like 9 hours. Giles has not seen any of the Scooby Gang all day. So depending on what time the creature got him, wouldn't he be worried about them?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. No matter what, it doesn't really make sense because the location of
really
the eggshell isn't even close to where Giles is either. So it doesn't it's not like he passed out or something weird like that. And we see later on in like just a few scenes when Jonathan gets taken over, it's immediate. It's not like it takes any time at all. As soon as that thing attaches, he's part of the hive mind.
And that happened with Cordelia too. It happened really fast.
Yeah. So the placement of Giles doesn't make sense. But then there's also like just weird things in his dialogue that I'm not like, why is the Giles possessed by a weird parasite offspring trying to make bad cover-up excuses for his demonology books to Joyce and trying to explain away things regarding Buffy? Like, none of that matters.
Yeah. Why, I didn't even catch that. But yeah, why would he care?
Yeah. It's literally, oh, distract Joyce, get the thing on her. All right, let's go and join.
Which he does. He gets her to turn around, and then he puts
Yeah, and once Joyce is
thing on her.
possessed, they immediately join the group. Which
doesn't make sense, because
either.
why was he waiting in the library?
Why wasn't he already doing that? Yeah. Like, it's real dumb.
Because he didn't know that she was coming. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So they go join everybody.
Yeah. This is also the section where Joyce kind of talks a little bit about parenting and how kids are a burden, which kind of echoes the speech at the beginning of the episode that we didn't get. But again, doesn't really go anywhere. She doesn't really change her mind on this stance or have any, like, learning moment in this episode about, appreciating your kids or anything like that. She's still just mad at Buffy at the end of the episode. So it's just, it's a weird beat. There's just a lot of weirdness to this scene.
So then we go to the janitor's closet where Buffy and Xander are waking up after 9-10 hours of being unconscious.
Mm-hmm. They should be very well rested.
Oh, yeah. So they talk about what's going on and how to get out of there. And then they notice on the ground are 2 eggs that are starting to crack, which these are some late cracking eggs. Because everybody else's eggs have already done this. Buffy grabs a toolbox and slams it down on top of them and kicks the door open, and they head to the library.
Mm-hmm. I will
say, where you go.
I will say, I enjoy this little section.
Yeah, it's funny.
Buffy and Xander just being almost like buddy cops, trying to figure out how to do all of this stuff without having the people who are good at doing this stuff around.
Yes, and I enjoy it too, and it's really funny, but I think at some parts of it, they kind of overdo it. Because, like, at one part, they're acting all like they don't know what they're talking about, and they're like, a bozo. Oh, no, she said bizarre or whatever. And then Buffy says, yes, great, okay, so I guess we look it up. But, like, Buffy's done research before. She knows how to look stuff up. Because Xander goes, in what? And Buffy's like, a book? Which is really funny and everything, but maybe a little overdone considering that Xander's done lots of research. And Buffy's done it before. Buffy comes up with the solution a lot of the time. Yeah. So, yeah.
I still delight in it, even though it doesn't make sense. I just think it's just amusing as all get out.
Well, like I said, it's really funny, but it does not make sense.
Fortunately for them, Giles has already done all the research and left the book conveniently out on the counter there. It's the very first book that they look at.
Yay, Giles.
Yay, Giles. And this is where Xander finds the eggshell as well. And the placement of it doesn't make sense, but we already discussed that.
Yeah, because he was putting books up in the book cage when Joyce came in, not behind the desk.
Yeah. Listen, Giles's librarian is stronger than any parasite offspring. His need to organize books overpowers all. Until
he gives one to Joyce?
Yeah, he just had to put away those last 2 demonology books, and then he was good.
Oh, gotcha. Then he was done.
Yeah.
Then we see Joyce and Giles walk into the boiler room, and we see it, and it's a giant underground cave with a bunch of tunnels and stuff going off of it, and we see pretty much everybody. Mm-hmm. And they are using all the tools to dig something up.
Air quotes, dig.
Yeah.
They lightly tap the ground and hope something happens.
Pretty much. It's so weird. So the next scene is Buffy and Xander in the library, and they're reading the research that Giles found, and they discover that it's a prehistoric parasite, and the mother hibernates underground, and the offspring take control of people through neural clamping, and discovers that they are taking orders from the mother Beazar. I don't know how to say that.
Bizarre, I think, is how they pronounce it in the show.
Bizarre, which is underground. Then they hear someone screaming, get it off me, get it off me, and it's Jonathan. And so they run out into the hall and find Jonathan, who's like, I'm fine, I slipped. And he's like a zombie now. So they decide to follow him. And they follow him to the hole.
Just another great, buddy cop moment where Buffy climbs through the hole and Xander's like, careful, and then immediately falls.
Yeah.
I had completely forgotten about that and laughed way louder than I probably should have. Oh, but yeah, Buffy and Xander are kind of scoping everything out, and they kind of come up with this plan where Xander's going to impersonate one of the possessed people, and Buffy's going to go get a weapon. And you kind of see Xander walking through. He kind of awkwardly takes a rock from Giles and just kind of tosses it to the side, and then sees Cordelia leaving with a tray of eggs and another person behind her, and follows them out. And then we go back to Buffy, who's up in the basement area looking for a weapon, and the Gorch brothers' master plan of showing up randomly in the basement of the high school at like 6 o'clock at night and running into the Slayer works flawlessly. Master strategizer Gorch brothers by convenience of plot. So they start to fight, and Buffy kicks Tector real hard, and Lyle's like, no, that's my brother, and knocks her, like, through the hole down into the area where everybody's collecting eggs and gently tapping the ground with tools. And Buffy sees Joyce, and Willow looks up and instructs everybody else to kill them. And then we have this amazing fight that I just enjoy so much, where Buffy and Lyle are both fighting like the people who are possessed, but then also fighting each other when they can make it work. It's just real amusing to me.
I enjoyed the fight very much too.
It's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is still my enemy fight scene.
Then we have Xander following Cordelia down a hallway to try to keep her from spreading the eggs out, which I assume they've already spread more eggs out than this. Like, this isn't the first set of eggs, since there's been people down there all day. Mm-hmm. And that at the end of this episode, like, all of the Scooby Gang is going to have to search the entire town for eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I assume once the mother's dead, then all of the offspring cease to be a threat, too, because everybody kind of drops. So I assume, like, at that point,
so, yeah, I guess
even
not.
the unhatched aren't really a threat anymore.
Yeah, but someone could still find one and, like, attempt to eat it, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's just going to be a bad day for that person.
Yeah. Xander tells Cordelia, I don't want to hurt you. And she hits him, and he's like, that's my bump. Where, he's been unconscious all day, so it's probably a pretty big bump.
Yeah.
So he hits her and knocks her unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone gets knocked unconscious in here except, like, Willow.
Yeah.
So we're back in the big room, and the brother, whose name is Tector, comes in, and he sees the bazaar moving under the ground and, like, leans down to talk to it, saying, hi, hello there.
He's not really known for thinking.
And it reaches up like a tendril and wraps it around him and pulls him under there, and we basically hear her eat him, at which Lyle turns to Buffy and says, it's all your fault. And she's like, how? Which I love that line where she's just like, how? Perfect.
So he knocks Buffy down, and then Joyce comes down on her with a pickaxe, which Buffy avoids, but the Bazaar grabs Buffy around the ankles. So Buffy, while being dragged down, grabs that pickaxe, and then you just hear snarls and groans and hacking sounds, and then suddenly everybody around Lyle falls to the ground, and you see, as he walks up to the edge of where the Bazaar was, the pickaxe being flung out, and then Buffy climbing out, just covered in this, like, blue, sticky blood.
Yeah, and she's not happy about it.
And, yeah, Lyle makes a smart decision for once.
All right. It's over.
Outside of the school, everybody's kind of just, like, shambling out. Giles is saying that it was a gas leak. And then, like, pulls Xander to the side and just like, what was it really? And Xander's like, I'll fill you in tomorrow, don't worry about it.
Well, which is kind of weird, because he knows they were talking about the Bazaar.
Yeah, like, he looked it up. He had it.
Yeah, so why does he not remember that?
So not only is, like, his need to put away books greater than being possessed, but his need to research is greater than being possessed. So while he was possessed, he looked up the information and left out the book for Buffy, and then, like, proceeded to tidy up the library for 8 hours.
Apparently, that's the only thing that makes sense. So I have lots of notes on this scene.
Okay.
Who's cleaning all this up? Like, the giant mama bazaar that was, like, huge and underneath the ground. Like, do they have to go in there now and finish digging her up to get rid of her?
They're gonna use the initiative strategy of just sealing off that hole and pretending like that's not back there.
Possibly. I mean, yeah.
The school's gonna stink real bad for a while, but the
Yeah.
cleanup's gonna be a little easier.
And, like, did Xander and Buffy carry everyone out? Like, did they literally physically carry everyone, like Giles and Cordelia and Joyce out? Because Giles doesn't remember anything, and, like, Joyce doesn't really remember anything
Yeah, it's not real
of, like,
clear.
where they were.
Maybe-
So here's the thing. Did they passed out down there beside the Mama Biozar? I really cannot remember how to pronounce this word. Beside the mama thing, where did they wake up at?
Yeah.
And if they woke up the same place they passed out, why don't they have questions?
The only thing that I could come up with is that there's just like a window of time where as they were getting up, they still, like, it took them a while before they could start retaining memories. And so, like, they just kind of ushered everybody out really quickly.
Hopefully.
Because Xander talks about, like, Joyce being confused. So, like, and says that everybody is. So maybe there's, like, a weird, like, it takes a while for you to kind of come back into your own consciousness after the possession. So, like, that could potentially
Which you obviously
explain it
don't
away.
remember.
Yeah. But anyway, everybody's, like, ushered out during this time. Apparently, Buffy goes and gets cleaned up during this time.
Well, she's not carrying anyone out.
Yeah.
Because she goes to take a shower.
Yeah, which I don't blame her, because that's
me
some
either.
gross looking goop. It's kind of interesting that it's kind of left to Xander to take care of the aftermath. And he's there, like, checking on Willow and Cordy, and, like, when Buffy comes up, he's the one that, you know, kind of explains how Joyce is doing. Like, he actually takes care of the aftermath of this situation. There is this fun little exchange where Willow's like, I really hit you, and he's like, yeah, knocked me out, and Cordelia's like, did I hit you too? And he's like, yes, everybody hit me.
And she's like, I just didn't want to be left out.
I wrote in my notes, Willow hit him, Cordy hit him, good times all around.
Yep, everybody hit him.
Buffy comes up and figures out where Joyce is and then goes to talk to her. And Joyce is concerned at first because there was a gas leak and is all worried about Buffy. And Buffy explains that she was in the gym. And then Joyce is immediately angry at Buffy for not being where she was supposed to be. And that she has to learn to take responsibility once and for all.
I'm grounded.
You're already grounded.
Oh, yeah.
There's just little dialogue beats throughout this entire episode. I'm just like, oh man, I forgot about all of these.
Yeah, and Joyce basically tells her she's confined to her room and she can only come out of her room to go to school in the bathroom. And there's a line in the script book that is not in the actual episode where she tells Buffy that her meals will be brought to her in her room and they won't be good. I'm like, okay, Mom.
Woo! Mad mama.
Are we talking bread and water or what are we talking about?
She's gonna slide them under the door.
Yeah. But, like, she basically threatens they won't be good.
So then we cut to Buffy and Angel making out.
Again.
I feel like they might be hinting about something that's about to happen between Buffy and Angel in this episode. I'm just getting an idea.
You think so?
Getting a thought.
I don't know.
I don't. Yeah,
You shouldn't assume things.
it's pretty.
Baby.
It's a little far fetched, I understand, but maybe, just maybe, there's some subtle foreshadowing going on in this episode that we're missing, and we should maybe analyze it a little deeper.
Possibly.
Possibly.
You sure you're not gonna get in trouble?
Hey, I earned this.
She's like, well, I'm not technically breaking any rules. And we hear Joyce shouting if Buffy's about to go to bed. And she says in a minute. And then as it zooms out, you see that Buffy is, in fact, in her room. And Angel is in the window. And they continue to make out.
Which
And, yeah.
I assume he is, like, standing awkwardly on the roof of her house.
Yeah.
Hopefully no one sees that. And also, who's patrolling? Because isn't she supposed to do that every night? Like, it's just... This episode is so much fun to watch, and it's got so many good one-liners. Even though, like, the basic storyline is bad, so bad that, like, when you think, oh, well, the next episode is bad eggs, I don't really want to watch that one. Because you forget how good the dialogue and stuff is.
The dialogue's really fun. There's like silly moments, and even though the silly moments don't really make sense, they're still enjoyable enough to watch that I get a lot of glee.
There's so many little things that when you analyze it, make the episode not make sense.
Yeah, and just the main plot just isn't interesting. Like that stereotypical, it's a high school show, so we got to do this sex ed episode.
It's that episode that you forget you enjoy until you watch it again. And they're like, oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a fun, silly, light episode. Much like the next couple of episodes will be, I'm sure.
You think we're going for a trend?
Yeah, I think so. Oh. I think we're going to just be really excited. I mean, the next episode's called Surprise. Wouldn't that mean like fun and exciting stuff?
Oh yeah, I guess so. Because surprises are never bad. Oh, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too. And we're gonna have a run of really solid episodes coming up, which is gonna be good because we've had some rough patches in the first part of season 2, and we're excited for what's to come.
Oh, it's about to get good. Really, really good.
All right, so we'll be back next week with Surprise, and we thank you so much for listening, and this is where we say bye.
Bye. I don't know that anyone would be listening to us unless they were pretty big Buffy fans already.
When I first was talking to my brother about naming the podcast Flunking the Written, he was just like, what's that from? And I was just like, oh, it's from Prophecy Girl. She says that she flunked the written. And he's just like, I feel like that's too obscure. I was just like, I feel like you don't understand who our audience is.
No, that is not too obscure. And which, was this Carl or Kier?
It was Carl.
Okay. Yeah, that's not obscure at all.
Well, he finally ended up saying, okay, well, I'll just type in Flunked the Written in Google. And if Buffy comes up in the first 5 results, then I'll say it's okay. And he searched it, and it was like nothing but Buffy. It was just a wall of Buffy. And he was like, okay, you're good.
Yeah.